We live?
We are live.
We are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this, as always, very, very last minute jump on conversation and talk about really important stuff. If only we were that organized and that quiet that we could actually plan a strategy. So we're hoping you've all got time to hang out with us today, or you're going to be listening to this conversation over the next couple of weeks. So the title of this, really dramatic, Surviving the AI CV Avalanche. I'd like to say it's a big one, right? So what are we, this is a topic that it feels like in every single conversation all of us are having, and I'll do the intros in a minute. We're talking about the overwhelm of applications. So conversations that we've all been having with TA and recruiters in-house and agency, our inboxes are flooded, right? Gone are the days where we put a job advert and do some social media and outreach work. And, you know, on a good day, we might get 30 or 40, like great solid CVs that we can go through and shortlist, like five or six. We are getting hundreds and hundreds in a matter of hours. And all of those CVs are beautifully tailored to fit the job that we've gone out for advertising, because everybody's using tech to game the system, right? And shortlisting is becoming a monster. It's becoming an out of control avalanche. And the gap between connecting with true talent, those that can come into our business and immediately add value, is growing in width and depth. CVs all sound the same. Mass application tools that allow you to apply for 1,000 jobs in 5 minutes, right? Again, creating this ginormous avalanche of confusion. AI writing CVs that, like I said, fit job briefs perfectly. And we're stuck, right? And we need to approach this as a problem, right? And that's why we're having the conversation. Amazing Sally Spicer. I'll let you do the talking because I won't shut up.
My exact word before we came on was, Joe, you're driving today, but don't worry, I will keep you in check because I've only got 45 minutes. But no, thanks, Joe. And do you know what? I mean, Joe and I have always got these booked in our diaries in terms of like getting together once a month, but normally we are a little bit more prepared. But we're kind of on the phone to each other on voice note yesterday saying, what do we talk about? And this is something that absolutely is front and center of the conversations that we're having. So yeah, Joe's going to talk about it from a kind of talent acquisition recruitment perspective, like sat in house. I have leaned in and I am fully flexing my career coaching skills at the moment. For those of you who know me, I set up my own career coaching business, goodness me, probably 5-6 years ago. And what we see in the market, having worked in the recruitment market for over 25 years, is the pendulum has swung, my friends. And so therefore, I need to really kind of flex these career coaching skills and services more so than on the recruitment side, because it is dog eat dog out there. And so I'm going to be talking to you about some of the lived experience of the candidates I've been representing and the clients I've been representing from a coaching perspective, and also my take on what the impact really is to the recruitment process and my views on what the recruitment process is. So that's what I'm going to be bringing to the table today. But Joe, last minute this morning, I got a lovely voice note to say I'm bringing a friend, which is just beautiful. So
I am bringing a very beautiful friend, and one of the most, I'm not just saying this because I'm biased, I am saying this because I mean it, one of the most talented human beings in the HR space that I've ever come across. And it's not just me that says this. Jordan has a reputation for packing a massive punch. The talking the truths, talking about the difficult stuff in HR that nobody ever wants to talk about. It's got an outstanding career and is an old hilarious human being. Says it how it is. And we've had a friendship for 25 years and we've watched each of our careers grow and flourish and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'll hand over to you, Jordan.
Wow. What an introduction. I promise she's not information for saying that, by the way. That's very kind. I'm very flattered by that, because actually I've probably been in the shadows for the last kind of 18 months, having been very visible in very senior roles for a very long time. And it's quite interesting to me actually how just the time out impacts your profile, how people respond to you, which kind of leads us quite nicely into some of the things that we're talking about today, which is ultimately about the impact. And I did a post, didn't I, yesterday, first post I've done in probably 12 months, that went absolutely viral. And I had like tens of messages in my DM box. I was talking about the impact of AI on sourcing, in particular on screening, and then actually the consequent impact it's having on the candidate experience. Now, candidate experience to me is the most important thing that an organization needs to get right for their brand. It's probably the biggest opportunity to create free, really, really impactful PR about your business based on the candidate experience. And I'll tell you more about what we did, which was a bit naughty. I ran a bit of a cheeky, what would you call it? A bit of a drains up, a bit of an experiment with a couple of friends of mine who I have to say are some of the most celebrated, brilliant, exceptional C-suite leaders I've ever worked with. And I'm talking about off the charts, who at this moment in time can't get a job, and they are not getting through the AI system. And neither are they getting phone calls back from all the recruiters who have placed them multiple times. So something's materially broken in this process. And I think often when we're responding from all of the things that are going on in society, like fear, AI is a big fear factor for lots of people because it's misunderstood, it's sensationalized. People might not be using it in the right way. There are companies that are doing a great job with it. Some of us are kind of in the middle. We all know now, we're kind of getting up to speed. But I think it's just a conversation that we need to have. And I think Jo's done a great job today because she's brought us all together to have this conversation. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks for that, Jordan. Just to kind of jump in on that, because you genuinely have taken the words out of my mouth. I was like frantically putting some notes together before this call, in that I think what we are seeing is, and the overarching issue that we need to address is, businesses see recruitment as a transaction, okay? And the adoption of automation and AI, they have been adopted to create efficiency and productivity, okay? And what business isn't going to want that, essentially, right? You'd be silly not to. But the problem is that you've seen it as a transaction, okay? What we are failing to realize and recognize is that talent management is, and some would argue, and rightly so, it starts with the attraction and recruitment of your talent, okay? And it is fundamental to the success of the organization. So if we are dehumanizing that part of the process, what precedent are we then setting for, this is why we want you to come and work for our organization as part of our talent management or talent ecosystem in order to drive business performance? And that, for me, is fundamentally what the first thing organizations are getting wrong.
Isn't it interesting? Like, we're recruiting human beings to join our organization, and yet we've completely diluted the human experience of that journey of coming on board and getting to know us and growing to love us and giving them an experience where people decide whether or not we're for them. The biggest decision that a human being can make, in my opinion, is where they work and how they work. It affects everything. It affects their kids, it affects their education, it affects where they live, the relationships with their family, their mental health, their physical well-being. I mean, it's kind of like if you were to draw like an image of a diagram of what the component parts of life, career, job, would be central to everything.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be really honest and vulnerable. I'm running my own business now, and I'm doing lots of really, really brilliant pieces of work, consulting work with some very prestigious clients. But oh my God, I've really missed the connectivity and that human interaction of being in a job and being at work. And you don't actually know that until you start doing this. And I think what's the issue that keeps coming back to me is the one of power. So if you think about Victorian factory worker days, when everyone was dispensable, employers didn't really need to make a whole lot of effort to do anything. I mean, whether, you were just there until you died and then you were shipped out, basically, including children before they changed the laws. And I can't help but think if we don't grab this back and take some control as candidates, we are absolutely left hanging in the balance with a group of people who are the front runners on deciding whether we, not the organisation, whether we are suitable for them. Now, let's be really clear. I grew up and I was privileged to start my career at Shell. And the whole MO of Shell was whether you were successful in the interview process or not, they wanted you to have a great experience. Now, that is just one of probably a million factors that make that one of the most famous, well-run, well-managed businesses in the world. They're not going to change that expectation of how they run their business. And if AI is applied, it will be done correctly. I can guarantee it. There's no way on this earth that the best organizations are going to allow AI to impact the quality of talent and pooling that they're able to construct under these new parameters. So that would be one thing that I'd say. But I just wonder, and I'm kind of concerned that there's so much volume and there's so much fear. So let's take what you said before, Joe, which I thought was really, really interesting. If you're getting 500 to 1,000 applicants per job because it's dead easy to apply, I'm guaranteeing right now that 70% of those applicants are probably completely unsuitable. The only reason they're applying is because it's dead easy to apply. They don't have to apply themselves. They can press 3 buttons and all of a sudden they're in the same pool as candidates that have done a cover letter, that have, you know, tailored themselves to the process. It's all kind of just changing a lot of the parameters and the things that we are acclimatized, I think, societally to expect. So the power dynamic shift, the ability to write a good CV now versus everyone can write a good CV. You can get AI to tailor your, it's kind of just dumbing us all down and making us all the same. And if you think back to the work that you two do, which is so fundamentally important, the DEI stuff, well, that's just a car crash waiting to happen for me, because if we're all the same and we're not, and we all want to be the same, and society and the screening process wants to make us all the same, then how on earth are we going to change the situation that we're in globally? If that's how, these are the new lenses that we're applying, to me, it's a much bigger problem. This is not just about people getting jobs. This is about us all being categorized as the same and pigeonholed. And you just whitewashed. It's quite scary.
It is scary, and I share the same views as you, Jordan, in terms of like, this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of the problems that we are creating. Because I think you're right. At what point do we say, well, we need to call this? Okay, so we've got job specs being generated by AI, right? You've then got CVs being generated by AI, and then you've got AI screening. Okay, so by default, because of all those things are in play, the application numbers are just going to increase. So at what point does someone come in and say, actually, a minute, hang on a minute, we've completely broken the recruitment process? The click to apply button, don't even start getting me on my soapbox about that button. I mean, goodness, and you've got to be careful because of where we're broadcasting as to who created that button. But it is, it's leveling the playing field in the way that the playing field doesn't need to be leveled. You know, that's not what equity and accessibility is about in recruitment process. You also made a point earlier in terms of, we haven't even discussed DEI. And I think that's really interesting in terms of what I was speaking about earlier, this kind of pendulum swing. Okay. The reality is that there are more candidates than jobs at the moment. There's more applicants than jobs. Okay. But we all know, having worked in this business for a long time, that pendulum will go the other way at some point. Okay. Because, well, we like to hope so, but it will go the other way. And that's when we see lots of organizations doubling down their EVP, doubling down their candidate experience, going into marketing mode. This is why you should come and work for us. When the pendulum is swung the other way and this talent is harder to find because there's less of it on the market, what are businesses going to do then?
And also, I tell you another really, there's 2 examples on my mind. I'd really love your thoughts on these. The first one for me is graduate experience. So if we think about, because for me, good leadership is about investing in the next generation of talent and making sure that we attract, we nurture, we grow talent in a really effective way. Because let's be really clear, if we have a massive talent gap because of this terrible experience and new ways of working that aren't really working yet, they're not really embedded, then we're going to lose a whole generation of talent. And that's really, really quite scary. And it's also going to be hugely damaging for society. I had a friend of mine who he's really big in PE. He's a real mover and shaker. He's one of the most charismatic, fantastic people I've ever met. His children, obviously, he's self-made. He's worked really hard. He's from humble beginnings, and his children are the most delightful kids you've ever met. They are now going through the process as graduates. They were a year behind each other. And as you would expect, they've had a fantastic education. They've done all of that. They've both applied to really large organizations that have used AI and no human interaction in their first stages of interview, not screening. Now, can you imagine if you are a top tier graduate who previously, when we were top tier graduates, if that's the route that you went down, you would go through a process. There would be a whole understanding of, well, do I want to work there? Do they want me? If they really want me, they're going to show me that they want me, and that's going to make it really wonderful when I get there, and I'm going to invest 150% and I'm going to have a great career. That's how it worked. And it worked well. That worked well for a really, really long time. Imagine now, even if you're top tier candidates and that's your first experience, what on earth would your response be, and how on earth are you building a connection with that organization to offer anything other than being really disappointed and thinking, what was the point in me going to university and doing all of these things and working so hard, and that's all I've got, an AI interview? I just find that.
And it's also the development, isn't it? Going through the recruitment process as a candidate actually evolves and develops you. I know when I kind of like reflect back on the times where I've started the process, and you know, the experience of preparing for interview, going for interview, meeting people, and every time you feel more and more confident and more comfortable. And I think
and
that
connected.
just kind of, and connected, and all of those, you know, all of those things, that it's not just about the career opportunity and the salary and the benefits. It's about being inspired by the people that you're going to have an opportunity to work with, and the vibe and the energy of the organization. I mean, I am a believer that I would prefer some kind of assessment-based AI or avatar-led screening interviews, rather than just it being fed into a system that's just looking to match words, right? And has been programmed to spot so-called bias-led, like, red flags. I think the key thing that I'd like to emphasize is that what I feel that a lot of us have done is we've plugged AI and automation into an already broken system.
Great.
Right? And I can't imagine for one moment that Shell, for example, who I expect are incorporating AI, haven't done a full or impact audit, have not thought really carefully about the integration of AI automation, the candidate experience, the hiring manager experience, and the overall impact on, you know, everybody who's involved in that process. And businesses like that will have used it to enhance and actually free up human beings for the really, really important
the strategic stuff.
The strategic stuff that I've just mentioned, and the human stuff. But there will be many, many organizations who already have appalling processes and broken systems that have never really worked for anybody. And then they've been sold the dream, right, by a lot of these rec tech companies, as we know, you know, then we know some of the way, the credentials that they sell themselves on. And what it's done, it's just emphasized the nonsense. It's grown the nonsense, and it's now uncontrollable nonsense. And the gap between acquisition is not closed. It's not all. It's created like deep crevices where people are actually have become out of reach. And like you say, we are at our most vulnerable when we are looking for a role. We want organizations that make us feel included. And even if we don't get the job, it was a learning experience, and we feel seen and acknowledged and heard and cared about. And I think I'm going to flag this. It might not be like on the agenda, but I am seeing more and more terrible mental health being created by what's going on at the moment. Some of my closest friends, especially from a professional perspective, I'm having conversations I never expected to have with them. And it all boils down to the fact that this is making them feel crap. This is really impacting how they feel, not just about their job search, but how they feel about themselves.
Wow. I mean, what a great point on all of the things that you've just said. And this is a wonderful conversation, is it? Because we're really getting into the whole the nuts and bolts of this. It's not just about, am I screened out? As you quite rightly said, I think the problem that we're having, if we elevate the conversation up a little bit to the macro view, my view based on some of the work that I'm doing at the moment is that unfortunately most organizations are driven by profit and shareholders. Now, in a market like we're living in right now, where AI is changing absolutely everything, there is more, there's the levels of volatility and unpredictability are unprecedented. We've never lived in a more unstable time economically. It's been a long, long time, probably since the Depression, that things were this unstable, whilst nobody's talking about it. So if you think about, you made a book recommendation to me ages ago, Joe, about don't change the women, change the system. And I think our role as senior leaders is to change systems. And unfortunately, average leaders don't change systems, they just perpetuate them. And I think what's happening at the moment in a market where the opportunity to generate money is going to become so hard for organizations, I really hope that we'll see a full circle effect whereby all of a sudden we start to realize if we need to make profit, even if that's your basic common denominator for an organization as a shareholder, then in the current market, the only way we're going to make profit is by doing all the old-fashioned things that differentiated us in the first place. Great leadership, great culture, great talent. And as we know, it goes full circle, doesn't it? Now, I think Soho House is a brilliant example of an organization that did an IPO, went to market, was backed by PE, and then the drive for cash and the drive to run it like a really big machine that was just all based on money. How has that resulted? It's resulted in Soho House going private again. Why? Because the desire to make loads of money at all costs and running a really, really good brand that's about long-term membership, belief in a brand, connectivity, don't work together. And I think what we're going to see a lot of, and we're seeing it certainly in other countries, that the next generation of founders who are setting up businesses and organizations, they don't even want to float on the stock market because they don't believe in the measures that are applied. They don't want someone coming in, buying their brilliant business and then driving out, taking out a load of costs and then telling them how to run it really badly. That's the absolute opposite. And I do work with VCs. I think it's really interesting. So what I'm seeing from an entrepreneur perspective, for example, is that loads of new founders are going out and they're doing an employee ownership trust. They want to give their organization back to the people that helped them set it up because it's much more sustainable. And I love that. So I think whether we like it or not, this is a mess right now, but this is going to sort itself out because people are losing their patience. They will become disengaged. And what do people do? They just think with their feet and find a solution anyway. So we will find solutions around the stuff that we're talking about. Yeah. I just hope that how we do that is by having these conversations and normalizing it so that we go, don't worry, you're not the only person that's feeling like this in the moment. Everybody's feeling the same thing.
I completely agree, and it's really interesting. I've been doing lots of deep dive work on this culture being the differentiator. So I completely agree with you, Jordan, because I think you're right. You know, I talked about AI and automation has leveled the play. I'm saying this in inverted commas, leveled the playing field in terms of applicants. It's doing exactly the same to businesses. Okay, business A and business B are going to adopt the same things in terms of AI and automation. What is their differentiator? Okay, the differentiator is the people in this culture. So I'm very much looking forward to this coming full circle in terms of that. And I also think you could put the added layer of DEI onto that as well, in terms of of this is going to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? There is going to be an opportunity for people to walk with their feet, whether that's as a consumer or whether that's as an employee. So I think absolutely that trend is coming. And I think that is the only thing we are certain of, okay, in this world, you know, this VUCA world that we're all trying to trade in. You know, if we get more comfortable with uncertainty and build resilient workforces that can take us through that uncertainty rather than the carbon copies of everything we've recruited before, which goes back to how do we start unpicking this as a problem? We've got to get really clear on who it is, what it is we are trying to recruit. Okay, because workforce management is changing before our very eyes. And we're so hung up on, we just need another one of these. We just need another one of these. We're not looking at what is changing within those roles and within the workforce that is going to make our businesses resilient and future-proof. Because if we can get really clear on that, going back to what you just said earlier, a minute ago, Joe, we can start creating recruitment processes that enable people to shine, enable people to show up and say, actually, these are the transferable skills that I've got that is going to enable you to take your business, you know, forward in whichever way it's going to, or make it more resilient, which is what I think this is the skill that we need to adopt and nurture within the organizations. And I think, you know, for me, one of the key things that we can do is if we're really clear on that and create recruitment processes where people can thrive and shine as opposed to select or be deselected or screened out, I think is the term you used, Jordan.
Yeah.
I think that's where we need to start. And there's one more thing I wanted to say on this, because I've just come off a call with 10 senior DEI leads, okay, who are exceptional at what they do. And I've created a community because so many people through my career coaching are facing the same challenges. I'm like, we just need to create a community and get people together, okay? And I think it's really interesting you say in terms of being screened out of the process. What I'm hearing is people are screening themselves out. And they're screening themselves out because they are seeing there's 100+ applicants. I'm not even going to bother, right? I'm not even going to bother entering this. I'm not playing this game. I am deselecting. So what these processes and the noise of what's happening in terms of AI and automation, but what it's doing is you are discouraging exceptional talent from even entering the race.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen people make the decision to set up their own business because they're, you know, one of my very, very good friends, absolute top of her game, chief revenue officer, chief exec, about to, you know, go into another CEO role, and just dipping her toe in the water. She's what everybody wants. She works in fintech, right? She's a woman in fintech. She's what everybody wants on the top of the shopping list, right? She dipped her toe in the water and she's like, oh, that is a hard no from me. And she just couldn't face the mental, what's the word? The mental work, the mental load, or of knowing that she was ending her current role at the top of her game and felt really confident, knowing what that would do to her in 6 months' time, knowing that she would be, her self-esteem would be lower. She'd have had to be in this, you know, world of just constant rejection. So what's she done? Doing her own thing. Now, look, there's a degree of privilege that's attached to doing your own thing. Not everybody can do it, but I've started to slowly see especially senior women at the top of their game. I've seen them slowly start to do their own thing. They've gone on into the candidate market. They've gone, not for me, no way. I can see the damage this is going to do. I'm doing my own thing. And isn't that interesting what you said, Sally, that actually we want to attract the very best human beings to our organization, and actually those that are in that position are saying, no, I'm deselecting myself out of process. And also, just to go back to you, I know when I came to listen to you speak at the
NIT event.
Yeah. What does that stand for again?
I knew you can ask me that. Something about knowledge, network, innovation, and something really.
Yeah, it was part of the city. What was it part of? The
We Are the City. It's part
We
of
Are the
the
City.
yeah.
And you did I took so much away from that session. You were absolutely brilliant. You made me like get fire in my belly. But you talked about the importance of workforce planning. And all I see in recruitment is firefighting, right? All we've done is engineer processes to reduce speed and hire quickly. And if we look at the fundamentals of skills-based hiring and inclusion and accessibility, none of it is about hiring quickly and reducing time. It's about really injecting beautiful processes that A, people enjoy, and B, helps organizations get the very, very best. And I think that in order to win this race, organizations have got to work strategically with TA. So workforce planning teams have got to work strategically with TA, got to really get under the skin of the people that work for our business so we can predict where they're at and what they will do. And then we're thinking about who we will need, what we will need, who's moving on, who's retiring. Okay. And actually going back to taking time to hire and seeing it for, it's not trying to cut corners and save money and do everything quickly. Go back to basics. And I think we are definitely going to see a full circle moment with how we hire, right? And our audience always love, I'm looking at the time, right? Because we've really set the scene here, haven't we? And I think what we also need, everybody shows up to listen to us because we give people top tips, don't we? We give them tangible stuff. We don't just tell them about what our opinions are. And just conscious of time, I think we need to start looking at like, what advice are we giving to candidates? And also what advice are we giving to TA? And what would you do if you were a HR leader at this moment? What do you think?
Jordan, you've got so much on this because obviously we were talking before. So go, please share your wisdom. We're here to listen.
Let's be honest. The first thing I think is the problem for most senior leaders, and this is not them. This is just the nature of the environments that you work in. You are so many layers away from the workforce planning process that you don't even have an idea. You're just entrusting that the people that you have in this huge behemoth of an organization are all somehow working together and collaborating and fixing that stuff. There used to be a fantastic program called Back to the Floor, which took CEOs back to the floor of their organizations that they'd set up. And I'm a real firm believer of that. And part of the work that I do with executive teams is there is an element of that where we go back in, right, you're going to spend a day and you're going to come back and you're going to really share your experiences of working on the front line. Wow. And it's going to be an eye-opener. And I tell you what, it's the most powerful stuff you can possibly do. So I think that would be the first thing. I think similarly, prioritization. So organizations have got shopping lists that they call strategies, and they're not strategies. Let's be really clear. You do 1, 2, 3 things really well, and you're all aligned, and everyone on the executive team knows and down what their contribution is to delivering that stuff. Get really sharp and clear on the stuff that you're doing. I think there's a huge opportunity in the current environment for businesses to really look at operational excellence. And I think that makes a massive, these systems that we've operated, particularly in large organizations, are just broken. There's going to be fewer people managing them, fewer people fixing them. They're all going to fall over and implode. And the only person that's going to impact is probably, 1, the candidate, and then 2, the brand of the organization that they're applying for. So I think there's a huge opportunity for people to start to fix the things that don't work in their own immediate vicinities. And I'm really, really, I'm all over that. I think that's really important. It's part of empowering people to change their environment. And then I think, the first thing, if I was in a CPO role now, I would be practice running various tests, going through these processes with my executive colleagues, trying if we pass the screening ourselves and doing a wash up. And the whole HR function would be asked. I'd be getting my HR function to do this, go out, test it, and come back with the results. And we're going to have a real half-day workshop and talk about it. Yeah. So, don't throw the baby out the bathwater. Don't think that AI is a silver bullet, and be very conscious of the role that you play in getting this right. That's the problem. It's the ownership piece. So who is responsible for that? And I would imagine there'll be loads of people. And therefore, as we know in organizations, if there isn't clear accountability one by one then problems just manifest because, well, it's Joe doing it. Oh, I thought Sally was dealing with that. And that's what's going to happen. And this is going to go round and round. And before you know it, you're going to have lost all the best talent. But there must be some cases out there of best-in-class examples of organisations that have done this absolutely beautifully. And there will be some. Let's find out who they are. Let's share them. Let's share that best practice and expertise for the benefit of everybody. And I think what I really like about society at the moment, we seem to be moving back to a bit more of that giving back. The fact that, you know, loads of people are just showing the best ideas now on social media. They're not even charging for it. They're just looking for fellowship and an engagement and a connection with the audience they're speaking to. I think that's great, because the idea that you charge for everything, I think there's a lot to be learned, and knowledge should be shared. It's not about power and control. So that's me off my soapbox. That's
amazing. Sally.
Yeah, I think
what advice are you giving to candidates?
What advice am I giving to candidates is protect yourself. Guy, you put a message up about mental health in the notes here, in the comments here, so thank you for sharing that. And I think you talk about the mental health from both sides in terms of, you know, candidates losing confidence and recruiters experience burnout. These things are happening. Some of the notes I wrote down from the session I literally had before I jumped on this were, these are how individuals are feeling: isolated, frustrated, their identity has been knocked, they're terrified, they're coming at it from a place of scarcity, there's lack of appetite, they're too senior, they're too opinionated, they're too expensive. Everything is coming from a place of lack. And what I did in that session is really centered back to, who are you? One even mentioned, do you know what? I've made the decision that when I'm in my next role, I'm going to wind my neck in, because I'm just going to go under the radar, because I don't want to be in a position where I'm made redundant at the end. Okay, these are people who have been hired as DEI individuals who are there to disrupt systems, to create equity, to develop and embed inclusion. Okay, so if your head of DEI can't behave like that in your organization, how the hell is anyone else going to? So my advice to anyone navigating what I'm calling the transition, okay, I'm not calling it job seeking anymore, I'm not calling it applicant, I'm not calling it a recruitment process. Through a transition is, you've got to protect yourself, okay? And you've got to really hone in on what it is that brings you that feeling of kind of security, and what gives you that feeling of confidence. You're not going to get that validated from anyone else. That's only going to come from within. And I think what I do see on the market is people actually dodging bullets, right? And I mean that in a really crass way. But what I mean by that is, if you haven't got a job at a certain organization, there's a reason for it, okay? And we see organizations who are going all out to recruit people, and I'm like, there's absolutely no way I'd work there. There's absolutely no way, because I know what it's like for people who are coming out. So trust yourself, okay? Trust the process, not the recruiting process. Trust the transition process. I too agree, Joe, in terms of loads of people going down to the consultancy route at the moment. There is a skill out there that people need and people will buy, okay? Whether that's on a fractional, interim, contract or perm basis. So centre back in on that, and number one, protect yourself is my advice.
Love it. I seem to have gone blurry. Don't know why. So I'm going to just give some like practical like recruitment. If I was running a TA team or recruitment team right now, what could I do? I always like to, what could I do in the next 7 days, right? And this kind of relates back into, like, we can't just plug AI and automation into broken systems. We need to make sure that they're running efficiently and effectively. So some quick wins for recruiters that are drowning in volume at the moment. Rebuild your shortlisting criteria, okay? You know, we're still like rolling out 42 bullet points of what we're looking for. And then after that, we'll throw in some nice to haves. So confusing. So, I mean, it's ludicrous, but it happens. So get really clear on what good looks like. Has that tickled you, George?
That's just really tickled me, because it's so true and it's so crap.
Yeah.
And you, as a candidate, you're like, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. Get clear on what good looks like. When was the last time you sat down and did a job reevaluation? And then changed your 10-year job description, right? Stick to 3 to 5 measurable skills. And that word measurable, not just what Bob had and it was really good and I think we'll look for it again, but we're not sure on how to assess or score it. Actual full, job critical skills and experience that are needed. Stop reading CVs and start bloody scoring them, right? So many recruiters I meet that don't know how to score a CV. They've not even created a scoring system. They're just reading it, and then we know what happens when we read a CV. We start to feel stuff. And usually that is loaded with bias and human preference. I think, I can't help it, but I really think we need to get back to adding a human filter. And this is what recruitment agencies always used to pride themselves on. You're paying me to be a human filter. You're paying me to engage and have conversations and human contact. And even recruitment agencies have gone down the automation route, and they're not doing it. When I say, this is the bit where it starts to go that you need control on your volume before you can do that. But if you get structured calls in with very, very clear instructions on what the objective of that call is, you know, with your long list, that is ultimately why people get into recruitment, whether it's agency or internal, is to have human conversations. What is your job if all you're doing is basically doing admin and administering tech, right? Boring. Get people back on the phones. I can't tell you the number of TA teams that I've met, or recruitment teams, that don't pick up the phone and have conversations with human beings, right? But they've got to be structured. They're not chitty chats. I don't want to know what you did on the weekend. I've got 3 questions that I want to ask you. And you know what? I'm using AI and I'm going to record it and whatnot. There's some really cool stuff. There's some really good tech that houses these types of conversations. I've seen them in action. The prompts are off the scale. Candidates are saying stuff and it's giving me all the nudge work. Unbelievable. What else was I going to say? Be really honest with hiring managers. And I guess this comes back into that workforce planning, innit? We promise the world. We don't manage expectations. This is my job, so I have to say yes to everything that you're asking me, right? We need, if the volume is unmanageable, if the time frame is unmanageable, we need to tell our hiring managers that I am not going to get the efficiency and the skill and the human contact in this process because of the time frame, right? It's going to compromise our brand. So again, and finally, I'm going to finish on, I think this is the perfect environment to get rid of the CV. Right? Because they're so diluted. They're all the same. None of them are real anymore. They've stopped being truthful. Right? And we are assessing, or whatever's assessing, nonsense, lies, fabrications, storytelling, right? So I think it's about getting really smart and using beautiful AI, skills-based assessments instead of working with a 2-pager that we've used for how many years? 15 years? I mean,
what would you do instead? Would you just have criteria that candidates had to answer questions?
I would have skills first tasks. That's what accessible skills first tasks based on real life experience. And I would use a very, very well trained AI and automation to assess the answers. I've seen them in action. Who does this really, really well? Arctic Shores do this really, really well. Equitas are brilliant. What's the other one? Be Applied. I mean, there's loads of really fantastic technology. You know, things like I've seen organizations use avatars of hiring managers really, really well, and then used AI that understands like real language, and it can interpret, like, what's the word?
Character.
You know, if I say something in a weird way, but I mean something else, and
it can translate.
And it can translate like what people are trying to say. Some of this stuff's off the scale. I would bring in that, because look, nothing's going to change. Applicants are gaming the system as much as employers are gaining the system. The CV is now a fairy story. So what can we do? And I tell you what, I would never click apply now if I had to do some work. Right? If I had to do an assessment, if I had to speak to an avatar of a hiring manager, a really high quality avatar of a hiring manager, would I do that for 30 minutes on an evening if I didn't feel I wanted the job? And I think you'll immediately see 70% of people fall out if they've got work to do. Always got to make it accessible, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts and top tips.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jordan.
The spontaneity is brilliant, isn't it?
On LinkedIn, please post about your business. I know you've got a huge profile anyway, but anyone in Joe and I's algorithm networks, I'm sure they would love to hear more about the work that you do.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I've loved it. So thank you for having me along. What a pleasure.
First of
many. Been a great convo.
Yeah, it has. Have a lovely day, both of you. Thank you both. Thank you, Joe. No worries. And yeah, let's speak soon. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.